Welcome, John, to the new podcast. Today we have with us John, who has been working with CRO domain for the last 15 years. He has an experience with working with brands like Nike, Adidas, and a lot of unreleased things, right? So today on this podcast, we'll try to uncover his journey, how he got into CRO, the kind of first tests he ran. Then there's something called DXO, which is more you're talking about, and he also written a lot of book as well, which is quite interesting. And there is a offer for other readers as well, and maybe what the future of CRO and DXO is ahead, right? So over to the episode, John. Over to you. Could you like maybe introduce to yourself about your audience?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, CRO and founder of The Good. The Good is a digital experience optimization firm. Have been doing optimization for over 15 years now. Brands like Nike, Xerox, Adobe, The Economist. We could go on. But yeah, it's hard to believe I've been doing this for 15 years now.
Yeah, I mean, how did you enter in this domain? Like CRO is 15 years back. Were the brands aware of CRO? Was it called CRO back then? And how was this journey of into CRO like?
Well, I think really where we started was as a development shop, meaning we would build e-commerce websites. And we did that for about a year. And what we always did was add on 3 months to all of our engagements with our customers of optimization. So we at the time we called it continual optimization. There was no such term 15 plus years ago of conversion rate optimization. But essentially what we found was all of our competitors would launch a website and then leave. They would say, "Hey, we finished the job. We got your website launched. It's time to leave." And what we found very quickly was that brands were working with us because we did 3 months of optimization. And we would just include that in our engagement. And they really appreciated it. They seemed to really like it. So once I kind of found that out, I quickly pivoted to only offering the optimization because there were very few people at the time doing this. In fact, I think we had one, maybe two competitors, and there were just not a lot of people offering just optimization. But there were a lot of brands, a lot of websites that needed optimization. So we very quickly found that it was a niche that we could own and have a very great business in. And here we are 15 years later, still optimizing sites for some of the largest brands in the world.
Wow. And one of the largest brand in your is Nike, right? How did you end up landing Nike? If you could share this story as well.
Well, Nike is an interesting client. So what we did with Nike was, how we landed Nike as a client. So I'm based out of Portland, Oregon, in the United States, and that's where Nike is headquartered. And there is, a big ecosystem here around Nike. And I knew that if I could get Nike as a client, that a lot of other brands would say, "Wow, you've worked with Nike. That's like a stamp of approval. That if you can work with Nike, then you'd be good enough to work with us as well." So I started calling everybody I knew and said, "Who do you know at Nike? How can you help me get a contact there?" And very quickly found some folks that I had just known through working with advertising agencies in town who could help me get in contact with the right people at Nike. That turned into some very small engagements. And we worked our way up to finally, at one point, we helped them to optimize their product detail pages. So that was probably almost 10 years ago now. But what that allowed us to do was land and work with a lot of other very large companies, because as soon as they saw that you had worked with Nike, as I was hoping for, they all said, "Yes, that means that you can work with us, that you obviously know what you're doing." And I had some really great contacts at Nike who were willing to be a reference for us and to really help us to take that next step. And,
Mm.
it really goes to show social proof, right? Everybody thought because we had Nike as a client, that we were obviously of the class that we could work with other enterprise brands, and that led to us working with Xerox and eventually making contacts at Adobe, etc. So we've been very, very fortunate to work with some really well-known brands over 15 plus years
Wow.
now.
And what about the e-commerce brands? Have you specifically worked with some brands or maybe Shopify? Maybe Shopify has been in picking up in the last 10 years, perhaps, right? So whenever you work with a brand on who's running on Shopify, whom do you interact with? Is it e-commerce manager? Who are the stakeholders you directly work with? Be it improving changes or running A/B test or something. How is
Yeah,
that done then?
usually it will be an e-commerce manager or a VP of e-com, a vice president of e-commerce. Uh, and you're right. When we first started The Good, Shopify didn't even exist.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that we decided to not do development for e-commerce anymore was because there were tools like Shopify that were coming out. And I could see in the near future that it was going to be very easy to launch an e-commerce website. Now, does not make running an e-commerce business easy, but you could get a website up in a day, where what we were doing was building these websites. And honestly, it felt like we were just becoming a commodity. We were really something where somebody could pay $100 a month to Shopify and get a site that would work and process orders. They didn't really need custom development. Now, there were companies that still wanted that, and we could have continued to do it for a handful of years. But looking back, it's a really I really think that was the right decision, because
Mm.
where Shopify is today, man, we I mean, if we had tried to compete with Shopify, it would have not been pretty.
I
So
mean, what about
I'm
the
very
optimizations, right? The things you did for bigger brands like Nike, right? So there are a lot of learnings you could actually useful for the smaller brands who are on Shopify, right? So how has that been working with the? Are you right now currently working with any of the Shopify brands as well? Is the question.
Oh, yes, we're working with dozens and dozens of Shopify brands. They're mainly usually smaller brands, right? So what you're
Hmm.
able to do in terms of optimization on those sites is generally less around A/B testing, because it's
Right.
really hard to get statistical significance. It is really hard to have the resources at a smaller brand to implement a lot of the changes that you would find um, in A/B testing of a Shopify site. So, what we've learned over the years is that there are ways to optimize these sites, but it does not always include A/B testing. Now, A/B
Yep.
testing is wonderful in that it is one tool in a tool chest. It can really do the job when it's the right tool. But too many brands look at conversion rate optimization and say, I need to A B test. And this is a big reason why I have been saying over the past year or so that CRO is out, and we need to figure out what the next step is for this industry. And I
Hmm.
propose that next step, we call it digital experience optimization. The reason I'm saying that is that digital experience very quickly becomes less about a conversion and more about
Hmm.
the overall experience. And as
Could
a
you share
brand,
more about
there
what do you
are,
mean by DXO? Yeah, go ahead.
yes, of course. So with DXO, or digital experience optimization, what we are finding is that there are too many brands who focus on just the conversion point, just the checkout. They are not
Mm.
focusing on everything else that is happening before a consumer gets to the checkout. And it is just as important to optimize that entire digital journey, that entire digital experience, because people are going to drop off at each step of that funnel. And if you only focus on optimizing for conversion, what happens is you are neglecting, you forget about everybody else that comes before the checkout. And as a small brand or a smaller brand, you cannot afford to neglect everything that happens before your checkout. Now, additionally, with conversion rate optimization, most people believe that that is A/B testing. they hear conversion rate optimization and they immediately go to A/B testing. The challenge
Yeah.
with that is, as I said earlier, it's only one tool. There are so many ways to optimize that does not involve A/B testing. Now, customers start that digital experience the moment they encounter your company or your brand online. And the goal of digital experience optimization is to create an intuitive and cohesive path for customers to discover who you are, to discover what you can do for them, to gather the information that they need to be able to understand, is this the right decision for them to buy that product or service? And if so, then convert, right? So that conversion point really does come last after all these other steps happen in the consumer's mind. So it is about giving people the things that they need at the time they need them to easily find the best product or service for them. And I argue it's both an art and a science, right? We uncover issues that customers face on a company's website or in their app, and we use research, we use data, and several types of testing and validation techniques to create solutions that get these real results.
Makes sense. So why a new term? That's a question, right? So why a new term, the CRO